Hello, welcome to Unit 13, Part 1. We are looking at political parties this week. All right. So we're going to look at the roots of the two-party system. How did the two-party system develop in the United States? All right. Well, you have to go back to 1800. All right. Before that, of course, the Constitution was written in the 1780s, and the government is set up during the 1790s. And it really has its roots there, but George Washington was president, and he was not a member of a political party and didn't believe in political parties, even warned against them in his farewell address. All right? So you go to 1800, and that's going to be the first real election for the U.S. involving parties, and the first party system will last until about 1824. Right? Thomas Jefferson is the first person to be nominated by a party for the presidency, and he will win. Right? And there's TJ. The first two political parties, however, were not national parties, they were regional. The Federalists that developed are going to be in the New England states down through like New York and into Pennsylvania as well. The Democratic Republicans are going to be a southern party and will come up through Virginia into Maryland, and the two parties, their regions kind of meet in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware areas. Like I've already been talking about them, but the first two parties we had were the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, which you should have learned about in early American history. Right? And there's a map. This is, I'm looking, I believe this was, this is the election of 1800. And you can see the number of electoral votes that go to Jefferson at 73, and Federalist Adams is second with 65, and you can kind of see the splits. The second party system is going to occur in the 1820s, 1828 approximately, because the first two parties basically dissolve after the War of 1812. The Federalists had been against the war. They did some things that became very unpopular, and the Federalist Party basically fell apart. At that point, there weren't a lot of divisive issues in the U.S., and so everybody basically becomes a Democratic Republican. Those years in between are known as the era of good feelings. James Monroe became president, and he went on a tour of New England after becoming president, and he's the Democratic Republican. He tours the Federalist era and talks about it, meets with people, and calls it the era of good feelings. Actually, a newspaper quotes that or puts that as their title in New England, and it becomes known as the era of good feelings, and you've got basically one party. And there's a picture of Monroe going through and people meeting in New England. But then in 1824, there's a close election, and John Quincy Adams defeated Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson wasn't happy about it. There were a lot of claims of some backdoor dealings, and there was a little deal made where John Adams got elected even though he didn't win the popular vote. It was very close on the Electoral College, and Andrew Jackson and his supporters didn't like it. And by 1828, they formed a new party, and it becomes known as the Democratic Party, and that is the Democratic Party that is still around today. And that's John Q. Adams on the left and Andrew Jackson on the right. You might recognize Jackson. He's on our $20 bill. Okay. Because you have one party, the group that's more of a John Quincy Adams supporters, they form a new party, and those are the Whigs. And the Whigs will be around for about 30 years, give or take. And they'll dominate the United States until the 1850s. I said the Whigs will be the ones that dissolve because the Democrats are still here. The Golden Age, 1860 to 1932 as it's defined. Right? National politics, we're going to have national parties. The Golden Age starts in 1860. That is the start of the Civil War. The Democratic Party doesn't dissolve, but it breaks up, and it's in the Northern Democrats and Southern Democrats, and then you've got the border states that develop their own party. The Republicans are in the North. There are no Republicans in the South at that point. From 1860 and 1930, the thing is both parties are pretty stable. The Democrats didn't fare real well because, well, a lot of it after the Civil War, and they were really looking for their identity to pull themselves back together. I often call them the party of confusion during that time period. Sometimes they're running the liberal candidate, sometimes they're running the conservative candidate. It's very, they're very unsure of themselves. Right? The parties are very involved in the daily lives of Americans. They're looking to get people to join their party and to vote for them. All right? As we move through the 1900s, that changed, though. Elections today are more about the candidate than the party. In the late 1800s through the early 1900s, it was more about the party than the candidate. You know, what was their platform? What were they talking about? What were they going to put forward? Right? And that wasn't just the candidate for president, but that was also the candidates in Congress.